to read. So welcome everybody to the October meeting for Monroe County Now. Thank you so much for coming. My name is Mandy Yates and I am the outgoing president. And I will let the, well, Abby is here from our election committee. So I will let the election committee talk about what's going on with that in just a minute, but we'll go through just a few things that we have going on. Sorry, board, I forgot to ask who needed to say stuff and who didn't. So I might just run through the names. Anyway, yesterday, actually, we were part of Spencer Pride. We had a booth there and it was a lot of fun. We got a lot of people signed up to get our newsletter. If you would like to get our newsletter, I would be happy to add you to that. And while I'm sitting here, I just realized that I need to get the link for the agenda so everyone can see it. So here's the agenda for today. And what else do we have going on? It is the end of the year. This is our last official meeting before our election. So anybody can actually be a part of the election Zoom if you'd like, but only paying members can vote for our next board. So I think the election committee will talk a little bit more about that when we get to that. So anyway, I just wanted to take the opportunity to thank everybody on the board. I don't want to get all teary or anything, and I'll make it short and sweet, but I have loved working with this board this year. It's been really amazing, and especially during a pandemic, the support that I have felt as a woman and a mother, like it means a lot. So I'll stop now before I start crying. Anyway, and I just wanted to draw your attention to a few things under the upcoming dates. There are some exciting things happening with National Now. For example, later this evening at 5:30, this is for members. There's a film screening and a panel of a new documentary called The Business of Birth Control. It was created by filmmakers Ricky Lake, go Ricky, and Abby Epstein. So if you're interested in joining that tonight, there is a registration link on the agenda. Also, this coming Thursday, Now and Every Girl World will be hosting the Girls State of the Union via Zoom. There is a RSVP link. I believe that's open to everyone, no matter what your Now member status is. And then, of course, I included our chapter election, which is next month on the 17th. I know it will start at noon. I have it until going until 1:30, but it may be a little bit shorter. And other than that, there are national board and national foundation meetings that are happening on December 11th and 12th. So stay tuned for details of that if you're interested in sitting in on those. And now I'm going to pass it over to Abby. Do you have anything for us?
As vice president or election committee?
Vice president.
Vice president. I don't have anything other than to say that I really miss everyone in Indiana. And like, it just feels kind of sad that this is going to be my last term. And then, but I will still, if the meetings are online, I will still continue to try to go to them. That's really all I have to say.
All right, awesome. Natalia, I know that you're exhausted from your month blitz of meetings and events, but if you have anything for us, let us know.
Yeah, no, I'm good. Thank you, though.
All right. Yeah, Natalia did the power of the Black and brown vote yesterday, and it was amazing. It's actually on our Facebook page and our Twitter. So if you want to view that, please go and do that. Social media. So let's see. Julie, do you have any membership information for us?
I don't, just the normal. If you're a current member, we are sending out reminders for membership renewal. So you'll get a renewal when your membership time is up. for renewing. Membership is available on a sliding scale from $10 to $40 a year. So whatever works for you, there's no questions asked. And if you are not a member and would like to sign up for a new membership, we have a membership form that will take you through those steps. And I'll put that in the chat here. And you can always email me at membershipdirector.mcnow@gmail.com if you have any questions, and I'll put that in the chat as well. So that is it. Thank you all very much. This has been very fun year.
Thanks, Julie. Amalia, welcome. Do you have anything for us on the fundraising front?
Just, always keep eye out for Fundraiser Fridays. It's Domestic Violence Awareness Month, so I was hoping to do something for that next week. Sorry if you can hear my kids yelling in the background. And that's it.
Awesome.
I'm gonna mute again.
All right, thanks. All right, and then we're gonna actually start a little bit early on Shruthi's legislative action update. So take the floor.
Okay, thank you. And first, thank you to Mandy and Abby and everyone who has done an amazing job on the board. So hopefully we'll get to thank you in other ways too. So I guess Mandy gave me the job of depressing everyone, and then I guess our panel got the job of trying to lift everyone back up. But Mandy asked me to do a quick kind of summary of where things are with abortion legislation. And the answer is that it's all bad and a mess. So I tried to sort things out with some kind of general principles or things to watch out for. And I want to be quick because I know everyone wants to hear our panel. So I guess the first thing is the Texas case that everybody is, or the Texas bill that everybody is focusing on. I'm sure you all know that there was at first a really good district court opinion staying that that bill from going into effect, which was very well reasoned and explained all the ways that the Texas law was unconstitutional. But 2 days later, it was overturned or reversed by the Fifth Circuit. And I just want to point out one of the Fifth Circuit judges who did that is a Trump appointee who is known for issuing one of the cruelest decisions in the last couple of years that deliberately misgendered and mocked a transgendered plaintiff because he doesn't think that transgender people exist or should exist. So now that I guess is back to the Justice Department is going to challenge that ruling, and it may be back in front of the Supreme Court. But as of now, the Texas bill is back into force. A couple of weeks ago when we talked about this last, I think I mentioned that if you hear anyone say that the Texas bill is innovative or does an end run around things and how do we stop it, I made the point that it's not innovative at all. A number of people, and most particularly Michelle Goodwin, who's a law professor in California and wrote the book Policing the Womb, has pointed out that the model or template for the law is really the Fugitive Slave Act, which empowered people to obviously to chase people across state lines, and hunt them down. So it's the same. So as she's pointed out over and over again, it's the same sort of mechanism and the same sort of template, which is very sad because a nation that turns its citizens loose upon one another is one that I think is extraordinarily weak and putting its own democratic principles at risk, right? So, okay, so then, so that's the Texas case. Then I want to run through briefly what's happening in the states. I found a little bit of conflicting evidence, and I think this speaks to how confusing the cases before the Supreme Court right now are. So there's some people say that if Roe is overturned directly, it's already been effectively, I think, overturned. That 10 states have automatic trigger laws banning abortion. Other places say 16. I think because it depends on which case actually is the one that the Supreme Court uses and their exact language. But just so everybody knows what's going on in the states, here are the other states that have put forward bills. Some of them are in effect already, banning abortion in various ways. So we have Texas, obviously, Oklahoma, outright ban on abortion except when a patient's life is in danger, is supposed to go into effect November 1st, so pretty soon. Arizona signed into law in April a measure banning abortions performed because of genetic disorders. Let's see, I'm not going to read the details of all of them. South Dakota, similar thing. Montana, banning abortions after 20 weeks. New Hampshire, ban abortion as well, no exceptions for rape, incest, or fatal conditions. South Carolina, heartbeat law. Tennessee, was trying to be more extreme than Texas, but lost because it tried to ban abortions at 6 weeks, but in a less extreme way than Texas. We have Ohio, Kentucky, Idaho, Pennsylvania, ban on Medicaid funds for abortions. And then Missouri, we have the 2018 law that bans abortions after 8 weeks on hold because it's heading to the Supreme Court. Okay, so now we go to, so those are all the states where the bills are either supposed to come into effect, as I said, in November. 2 of them already came into effect, and then the rest are supposed to come into effect over the next year. Obviously, we'll face legal challenges, and we'll have to see how they play out. But in the meantime, we have 2, potentially 3 cases going before the Supreme Court. One is the Dobbs case that we all knew about before the Texas case, and was designed to, the plaintiffs are specifically asking the Supreme Court to overturn Roe. There's another FDA case that might be before the Supreme Court, and depending on how quickly things proceed with the Texas case, that also might be before the Supreme Court this term. Probably not directly, but in terms of reviewing some of the procedural legal challenges. Okay, so what do we think? Before all of this happened, we thought that the Supreme Court basically had 3 choices. They could say outright Roe is overturned. They could say Roe is overturned because it was a poor precedent. It didn't really work as a precedent. That's one of the main legal challenges people have been putting up for years. If that happens, that will be really bad beyond Roe, because that will make it much more easy to overturn precedents in all sorts of different areas like voting rights and civil rights. The other thing they could do is say Roe stays on the books, but we're going to limit third-party standing, which is the right of other people to challenge these laws. I think that's particularly dangerous because we're seeing in a lot of democratically backsliding countries in Eastern Europe and Latin America that one of the things the governments are doing is trying to limit third-party standing in lawsuits, because then you're left with an individual plaintiff who has no money and possibly doesn't understand the laws, left to challenge what's going on. But this would be to stop doctors from challenging abortion laws. And then the third possibility is that they don't really say that much about Roe, but come up with a new standard for evaluating whether abortion bans can go into effect. And if they do, it'll probably be something riddled with loopholes and making it so that abortion will be effectively banned, I think, or that states can effectively ban abortion by restricting access or all sorts of other limits. Okay, so what could happen next? I thought that was really depressing. And then I found this article by Katha Pollitt that I thought puts it all into a slightly even worse perspective. So what she says is, when we talk about Roe being overruled or overturned, we often talk about turning the clock back, right? So I want to make 2 points. One is that it's really, I think the most unlikely situation, although I don't know because the Supreme Court is really out there, the most unlikely situation is for someone to say Roe is overturned, because that will, presumably galvanize people, and, even people not paying attention to these issues would realize what's at stake. So it's much easier to sort of kill things with 1,000 paper cuts in ways that you can still say the law exists or that this constitutional right exists. It's just, it doesn't exist in practice. And that's what I think the Supreme Court and courts have been trying to do for many years. This might be the day that they decide, who cares what people think, we're just going to do it because we have the power. I don't know. But I think it's important. I went through all these state cases and all these other things just to say that we may not have this crisp moment. I don't think Texas was this crisp moment. Everything could be really confusing and a big mess. And that makes it much harder to fight against and much harder to rally people to fight against abortion restrictions when it turns into a debate over some technicalities that most people don't understand, right? Okay, so I just wanted to read you this thing by Katha Pollitt, where she says, we're wrong when we say that whatever happens, that what's going on is turning the clock back to the pre-Roe days. She says, in many ways, post-Roe will be much worse than pre-Roe. So I just want to read you a couple sentences that she said, just so we can all think about what's happening and what to do. So she says, during the entire century or more that abortion was illegal in the United States, hardly any women went to prison for ending their pregnancies. They were subpoenaed to testify against their doctors. They were humiliated in court. They were hounded while dying in their hospital beds by police officers looking to identify the provider, but they were not themselves put on trial. Mothers, friends, boyfriends, husbands, and others who helped them with money or arrangements or transportations were left alone. Unless there was a death or serious injury, few providers were arrested. This time around, it will be different. When abortion was illegal, there was no organized, aggressive anti-abortion movement with a wing of violent fanatics. The language of fetal personhood and fetal rights was much less developed. People thought abortion was wrong, but the rationale was as much or more about enforcing female chastity and promoting marriage and childbirth, much more than it was about baby killing. So that's why until the 1960s, it was only a misdemeanor. Today, the only argument left standing is that fertilized eggs and fetuses are persons and abortion is homicide. That has raised the emotional stakes so high that it is hard to explain why a woman should not be prosecuted or why the friend who drives her across to the clinic is not an accessory. Even now, and then she talks about all the women who are being arrested for having miscarriages. They're in part because she says there's a lot of anti-abortion people who work in hospitals and are turning people in. So then she goes on to say, there might be something like this Texas bill, right? She was writing about this before it actually came into force. And so she says, overturning Roe will invite more and more of this kind of madness. This is something for us all to ponder as the Supreme Court weighs Mississippi's challenge to legal abortion. That's the Dobbs case that we're all thinking about before Texas. Okay, so that was it. I just wanted to give you a little overview. I have nothing positive to say about any of it, except that, I think we need to fight as hard as we can. I think it needs to be clear to everyone that this is an assault on the constitutionality of reproductive rights, on Roe, on women, on anyone who could become pregnant, but also that the consequences of Roe falling in whatever way it does over the course of this year could be much worse than, could echo beyond reproductive rights, right, to voting rights, to all sorts of other things. And so I think we need to be on top of these things as much as possible and do what we can here in Indiana. I think we have 3 legislators so far who've announced they want to introduce a Texas-style bill here when our legislator opens. So we still have the power of taking action, of trying to make our voices heard. And at least, if you're going to go down, you should go down with a fight. I think that's the most positive thing I can come up with right now. Sorry, everyone. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Mandy.
All right. Thanks, Shruti, for that update. And I completely skipped the election committee update, so I'm going to turn it back over to Abby so she can tell us what's going on.
Hi. So just kind of a little bit of update for the election, about the election committee. So Charlotte, who isn't here today, is my co-chair for the election committee, since both of us are also outgoing. And so we've been kind of busy emailing past board members to try to figure out who might like to run again. And we should shortly be emailing members as well to kind of let them know that the election is upcoming, and as well as what positions may still need to be filled. So I'm just going to put the link to the annual meeting and election in chat. And so you can, that's not it. Well, it's not a registration, but just November 21 at noon. And so in terms of positions that membership are available to run for, I'm going to put that in chat as well. But in particular, the seats that I think we are looking to fill might be secretary, legislative action, and fundraising in particular. So I believe you can run if you are currently if you're currently a member, you are eligible for running. I can't remember off the top of my head what is the cutoff date.
It was August 15th.
August 15th. So if you became a member on or before August 15th, then you are eligible to run. I don't know if there's anything else that I am forgetting off the top of my head. I know last year we had some kind of like a fun quiz thing or a trivia thing with prizes, but a lot of people didn't pick up their prizes at all. So I'm still debating whether or not we should do something like that again. It could be fun, but yeah.
Yeah, actually, Tammy Jo, do you still have shirts that people left at your house that they won?
Yes, I have 3 shirts and buttons because no one's picked them up.
Oh, yeah.
Though I'm still holding it for Laura because she said when she came back, but the other 2 people who won, I sent them messages a couple of times and they never replied. So
Okay.
I won a shirt last year and I haven't picked it up yet.
Oh,
right, you did. That's right.
So
will.
actually, Tammy Jo, I'm going to see Laura around Christmas time. And if you want, I'll just get it from you and take it to her. We're going to meet up in North Carolina, actually.
Okay, that would be great. Just shoot me an email, let me know, or a text message.
Okay, awesome. Thanks for holding on to that stuff over the past year.
Yeah, and you too, Amalia. Send me a text or something. Let me know when you're coming to pick them up. But I only have 1 shirt left, y'all, and some buttons and stuff.
Okay,
All right.
maybe
so I
this
think-
week because I can't find my other shirt, so I need one.
Oh, good. All right. So I think we're ready to move on to our panel part of our meeting. All right. So I'm pleased to introduce Mary Hobson, Sydney Melvin, and Professor Deborah Widiss. Mary Hobson and Sydney Melvin are founders and co-presidents of the Dignity Project here in Bloomington. They are both freshmen at Indiana University and are committed to their mission to fight the lack of menstrual and general hygiene equality in our community. Professor Deborah Widiss's research and teaching focuses on employment law, family law, statutory interpretation, and the significance of gender and gender stereotypes in the development of law and government policy. Her work has appeared or is forthcoming in many leading journals. Professor Widiss has received several awards and grants for her research, and she has been quoted as an expert on issues relating to employment discrimination, same-sex marriage, and domestic violence by numerous media outlets. Professor Widiss joined the IU Maurer School of Law faculty in 2009, and before transitioning to academia, this is interesting, I thought, she was an attorney at Legal Momentum, which was formerly called the Now Legal Defense and Education Fund, where she was a national expert on the intersection between domestic violence and employment. She was appointed as Associate Dean for Research and Faculty Affairs here at IU in 2019. Please welcome Mary, Sydney, and Deborah. All right, so I have some questions for our panelists, and each of you can answer. This first one, what is period poverty and menstrual equity? We can start with Sydney and Mary.
Of course. So to us, period poverty is basically at its core a lack of access to period products. And then I believe it affects around 500 million people worldwide. So it's a very relevant issue. So period poverty and having no access to menstruation products can cause people with periods to miss out on school, work, or other obligations because of the stigma and shame that is associated with menstruation. And menstrual equity is really a movement that has sparked kind of as a way to combat period poverty, because essentially at its core, it is about making period products more accessible, affordable, and safe for people who menstruate and may not have the resources to obtain these products in traditional ways.
Thank you. And then Professor Widiss?
Well, I agree with everything Sydney just said. I guess I would say that menstrual equity, I think as the movement is developing, is period poverty, but a lot of other aspects as well of sort of normalizing menstruation and people who menstruate, and thinking in various areas of life, what would it look like if we just took that as like a baseline? This is a normal part of human life. And so that includes better access to menstrual products, but also a whole bunch of advocacy around the fact that menstrual products are taxed as like non-necessary items. This is a sort of tampon tax movement, which is to remove the sales tax from menstrual items the way it is not. Food is generally not subject to the sales tax because it's considered a necessity. And the idea is, well, so are these, that seems pretty basic. I think also in the piece that I've looked most at is where people face discrimination or harassment because of menstruation. And I'll just throw in menopause too, to the extent that, which is connected but somewhat distinct. Trying to figure out how to confront that under existing anti-discrimination laws, shoring up that it seems kind of intuitive that should be considered discrimination on the basis of sex, but courts sometimes get a little bit confused because there's no good comparator. And then also thinking about how that kind of discrimination or harassment also can, include aspects of race discrimination or age discrimination or gender identity issues, so you may have people who are menstruating who are not identifying as female, and sort of how to handle that. And, a whole host of sort of connected questions that really, when you think about participating fully and equally, requires accepting that this is part of life, and sometimes might need some kind of accommodation in the workplace, and that should be a kind of basic given thing as well.
Awesome, thank you so much. So directing this question more toward the Dignity Project, tell us about your organization's work in the Bloomington community related to period poverty and menstrual equity.
So as you said before, we at the Dignity Project are focused on providing essential hygiene products to women and menstruators in need throughout Bloomington. And because Sydney and I both grew up in Bloomington, we have a very strong drive to help uplift people in need within our community. And recently that has manifested as fighting period poverty, as we ourselves have become more aware of the issue. And as other groups such as like the Per Sisterhood Workshop here in town have kind of focused on that in the past year. And as far as what we specifically do, we have organized several donation drives, collecting period products and working with shelters to find out what specifically they need to help support the people that come to them. And in the past year, we have been able to donate around $2,000 of products to shelters, as well as leading several education campaigns on social media to help our followers and other people in our community learn more about this issue.
Awesome. Actually, I wanted to follow up with that because you mentioned that you both grew up here in Bloomington. Did you do any menstruation product drives in your high schools or?
Yeah, we did. We actually started as like a high school club, and then we developed into an official 501c3 in June of 2020. But yeah, we were actually initially within our high schools at North and South.
Oh, that's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Actually, I'm trying to find your website, and for some reason my internet is being really slow.
No, you're okay.
And I will.
You guys were very generous when I worked for Middle Way House.
Yes, thank you. I know. I was going to say I recognize you.
Yeah, that was really helpful. Very good.
And I'll just say my daughter's at North now, and I know they're still continuing the fight. She's like, good. Oh yeah, we have a committee working on this. I was like, well, good.
Yeah, it's a process, but
yeah,
that's awesome.
Our website is thedignityprojectbloomington.com, and I sent you an email with slides earlier, the hyperlinks on the last one.
Oh, okay.
You got it. Yeah.
Oh, I got to go look for that. Do you want me?
No, you're fine.
Do you want me to put the slides up?
Yeah, you can. Yeah, I'm happy to go over the presentation whenever you're ready, but we can go through the questions first.
Yeah, hold on. I think I must have missed that. I apologize.
No, you're totally fine.
How about this? In the meantime, I will flip the question over to Professor Widiss.
You can have to call me Deborah, but
Okay, sorry.
No worries.
So for Deborah, tell us about your research and work and how it relates to period poverty and menstrual equity.
So I should be honest, like I've published one really short essay on this. There are other people, law professors, who are really invested in this, and I can kind of point people to resources if you want for more than I've done. I've worked on this issue though of discrimination at work, and it kind of can get into the weeds of legal arguments, but it essentially boils down to people who were fired. One woman was dealing with perimenopause and had excessive bleeding, and it leaked, and she got fired for that, and alleged sex discrimination. And the court was like, well, we don't really know if this is sex discrimination because, normally we'd look to see a man who's menstruating in the same way and were they treated differently, and then we would know it's sex discrimination. And she was like, no, that's really not the right framework to be thinking about this in. And it's kind of an echo about a whole bunch of cases back in the 1970s, which asked the same question around pregnancy discrimination. And, kind of amazingly, the Supreme Court looked at the existing law, which prohibited discrimination on the basis of sex, and said, well, pregnancy discrimination isn't sex discrimination. It's just this thing that happens to women, but there's no comparison because we don't have pregnant men. I mean, sort of setting aside non-binary and trans, but like in the framework as they were thinking about it in the 70s. And so Congress disagreed and amended the relevant law to say pregnancy discrimination is sex discrimination, and it says pregnancy discrimination in related medical conditions. So one of the arguments in these cases is, well, when you have, somebody alleging discrimination based on menstruation, is that a related medical condition to pregnancy? And I think it should be considered. I think that should be, obvious, but I think my bigger point was it should just be sex discrimination, kind of separate from this pregnancy and related medical condition language. And that's actually really important because employment discrimination law has this pregnancy and related medical condition language in it. But like Title IX, which prohibits sex discrimination in education, doesn't have the same language, but it does prohibit discrimination on the basis of sex. And so the point I was trying to make is, even as these early employment discrimination cases get brought and litigated, like it's really important to recharacterize this kind of discrimination as sex discrimination so that it will apply not just in employment, but also in the education context or the housing context or prisons, sort of these places where it's illegal to discriminate on the basis of sex, but don't have a specific language about pregnancy and related medical conditions. So I realize that was kind of a maybe hyper technical legal point, but I'm happy to answer questions on it. I think the bigger picture is, just understanding how much of the stigma and the shame, sort of separate from this sort of technical argument is tied up with sex stereotypes and this idea that women should, or people who menstruate, shouldn't be in public when they're menstruating and it's unclean, and, reframing that and connecting that to recognizing that that's about negative stereotypes about women generally.
Yeah, actually, you just made me think about when I first started doing yoga, I don't know, like 20 years ago. This is really strange, but they would always talk about how you shouldn't do inversions when you're on your period. And I'm like, what is that all about?
Yeah, no, the kind of yoga I do, Iyengar yoga is very into that. And I'm like, I don't think it's really an issue.
Yeah, I don't know.
I've definitely been there. And
right. And most of my early yoga teachers were women. So I'm like, why are we perpetuating this weird idea that you shouldn't do that when you're on your period? I don't know. Anyway, I do apologize. I did actually get the presentation from the Dignity Project. So I am going to get that up and running, and I will, hold on. Got to share my screen first. Okay. I am very not well rehearsed in this. So if anyone has any, oh wait, is that working? No. Desktop share, here we go. All right, I think everyone can see this. I'm going to go to present mode and I will let you take over.
Thank you. So yes, we're the Dignity Project. I'm Sydney, and our slogan is Women Empowering Women. You can go to the next one.
Oh, sorry.
No, you're
I don't
fine.
know how, do I just push next or I have
Yeah,
no-
you might. Yeah, I think you can just press the arrow down or to the side.
Okay, let's see.
Maybe.
Okay.
Or yeah, try like clicking on the right side or something.
Okay.
And see if that'll flip it.
Click. Oh, is that it?
Yes.
Awesome.
Okay. So our mission, we seek to provide women in need with hygiene products necessary to lead a healthy and successful life. Our products not only benefit women in need both physically and mentally, but also support local shelters by helping them focus on their core missions of housing, aid, and empowerment. And we collect these funds and donate these products because we believe that every woman deserves a sense of dignity. And then that's a little picture from us from one of our period poverty like awareness posters a few years ago. And then a little bit about our history. We started as a high school club in 2019 and have since developed to be an official 501c3 nonprofit organization. And we currently support 6 shelters and we are still currently student-led in Bloomington. And then for our collections, this is a picture of one of our collections we did with St. Charles School, and they collected about 1,000 products for us here. But we collect all hygiene products, anything that's donated to us, we're able to use in some way. But as a few examples like shampoo, conditioner, soap, hairbrushes, razors, and obviously pads and tampons. And then we've recently moved into menstrual cups actually too. So and then, so our donations, we do at least 2 general hygiene donations a year. And then we do awareness drives, as Mary mentioned before. But an example of that is like our period poverty donations. We all know what that is, but that's like specifically what we raised. We donated tampons, pads, and then menstrual cups in that specific donation. And then those are just some pictures of us on our donation rounds. And then some more examples of donations that we have done is like COVID protection, where we donated like sanitization products, and then textured hair during the BLM movement. Last summer especially, we collected about $1,000 worth of Black hair products and donated those to shelters with a need for that. And then just like a little bit more about us. My name is Sydney. My preferred pronouns are they, them. I graduated from Bloomington High School South last February, and I'm currently enrolled as a freshman at the Kelly School of Business.
And my name is Mary. I am also a founder and co-president. My preferred pronouns are she, her, and like Sydney, I graduated in May, but I graduated from Bloomington High School North. And I am currently enrolled as a freshman in the Hamilton Luger School.
And yeah, just to thank you guys for having us here today. With our volunteers and members, we're able to serve our community and hope that we have your guys' support. And it's great to meet you all. And if you go to the next slide, it's all of our contact information. So if you just like want to copy the link and send it out, that's how you guys can reach us if you need anything or want any more information.
Oh, I see something just popped up in the chat.
Oh,
thank you so much.
Yes,
appreciate that.
Thank you.
Awesome, thank you so much. So I do believe that the link to the Dignity Project was shared by Amalia. I think it's in there. Yes. if you just scroll up, the dignityprojectbloomington.com. And then when I was actually looking for donation information, I found a link to the COVID-19 protection fundraiser that you're doing. Is that something that you are still working on that we can share?
It is. It's like just kind of ongoing until the pandemic ends. But it's just like ours, we have like specific funds on GoFundMe. So if you donate to the COVID protection, then those funds will go towards like sanitization products. Whereas if you donated to the period poverty one, it would go to like menstruation products, and then like general hygiene would just be any of our products.
All right, awesome. I just shared that link in the chat as well.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And I have my daughter coming in. Hi, Audrey. Do you want to say hi to everybody?
I look gross.
Oh, honey, can you ask me later? I gotta ask questions. I'm moderating.
I was
Okay.
just gonna say,
Okay.
I was just gonna say that 2 years ago on the dating movie.
Okay. Okay. Sorry about that, everyone. So this question is for everyone. From your perspective, how is menstruation related to human rights? And what are some challenges that people may face accessing supplies?
So for us, at least, menstruation as a human rights issue is a really easy connection to make. Unfortunately, at some point, all people who menstruate have faced stigma, shame, or embarrassment for something that is just a biological function of their body. And the stigma is only made worse when people who menstruate don't have easy access to the essential hygiene products that they need because of cost barriers or lack of availability. And some specific challenges that they face are within government programs such as SNAP and WIC, because these are food stamp programs that people under the poverty line heavily rely on. And unfortunately, because period products are considered a luxury item, they are not covered in these programs, which makes access a huge issue for them. And similarly, the pink tax only further serves to raise the cost of period products. And again, with accessibility, makes it harder for people who are struggling with income or anything like that to gain access to these products. And because of this, it can lead to the isolation or mistreatment and discrimination of menstruating people.
And then Deborah, would you like to add to that?
Maybe just kind of picking up on that final point. I mean, I think one of the things that why it's so important to make sure that products are available and easy to access is that without them, you know, people when they're menstruating just don't feel comfortable for very good reasons, you know, sort of engaging in public and living their lives. And, you know, and so you have people that feel that they can't go to school or go to work or do other things. And so it's sort of, you know, for decades of somebody's life can be kind of constant absences and constant stress. You know, and I think it's really important to reframe it as a normal part of human life. And when thinking about essentials, you know, food, shelter, other things that are sort of classically recognized as what human rights should ensure to every person, that adequate menstrual supplies is part of that, so that you can be fully engaged in the world. I mean, there's a reason there's all these stigmas around it, but it's renormalizing that too, and just saying this is part of the way, you know, the bodies of roughly 50% of people function, and this is proper and normal, and, you know, and nothing to be ashamed of, but then also access to products to make it comfortable.
Yeah, I agree. So how, this is for everyone as well, how has the COVID-19 pandemic affected period poverty in our community and the state and in the United States?
So for us specifically, at the beginning of the pandemic, we noticed a very understandable shift from the items that shelters will traditionally ask for to more protection items. Instead of asking for pads and tampons and shampoo and conditioner, they were asking for masks, Clorox wipes, toilet paper, really everything that everyone else was asking for. But fortunately, at the same time as this was happening, we also had several shelters reach out to us about redistributing hygiene products that they had received because they had received so many, and they didn't have enough people to support to use these products that they had received, just because of the noticeable uptick in donations that they were getting. So I would say that it has definitely drawn more awareness to the issue, and people are more generous now.
And then Deborah.
You know, I think one of the challenges at this stage of the pandemic is like there was that initial outpouring and great awareness. And I think that there are people for whom, you know, there's still a ton of insecurity and problems and health concerns that make it difficult, even though, you know, hiring has picked up and things again. That I think one of the challenges anytime you have a shock like this is kind of sustaining support, even when it feels a little less immediate. And, you know, the pandemic's not really done. Like it's in a different place, but it's certainly not done, and the ripple effects of it are not done. And so just kind of being cognizant of that and then remembering that, you know, even pre-pandemic, our baseline, there's a lot of people in this country that don't have resources for basic necessities. And, you know, if we get back to our pre-COVID normal, there will still be a lot of people in our country that don't have money for basic necessities, and just sustaining that kind of support without the like drama in the headlines of a pandemic upsetting everything, I think is one of the really big challenges.
Yeah. So we're going to turn over to talking about legislation a little bit here. In the 2020 Indiana legislative session, Representative Carrie Hamilton from Indianapolis introduced House Bill 1226, also known as the tampon tax bill. Unfortunately, it died in committee. So the question is, how can something like tampon tax legislation work to alleviate period poverty?
The tampon tax legislation would be huge as far as making period products more accessible, as it would help to alleviate some of the cost burden that approximately 1 in 4 Hoosier women struggle with. And because it would also alleviate the sales tax for that, it would decrease the price, and I believe it'd be a step in the right direction as far as making period products less of what is seen as a luxury item or something that isn't necessary, and putting them into the frame of a necessary product.
I agree. Actually, I tried to get Carrie Hamilton to be on this panel today. Unfortunately, she'd already committed to something else. So I would love to actually see someone, maybe her or another legislator, introduce something like her bill in the next legislative session. So I'm going to turn the question over to Deborah, and maybe she can give us more of a background, maybe some hope about any legislation that might be coming up.
Well, I do think, you know, the tampon tax movement has been pretty effective, and I think, you know, it's mushroomed quickly because I think it's pretty intuitive to people when they stop to think like, wow, that seems really unfair. It is kind of a necessity, and so I don't have the numbers at the tips of my fingers, but I think it's passed in some states where you might, you know, not think it would necessarily pass, and so you know, I think it's passable in Indiana. I will say personally, like totally support efforts to get rid of the tampon tax, but I think that ultimately sales tax on these products is kind of a small portion of the cost. And, you know, the proposals to make sure that it's can be covered, that products are available and that the cost of products can be covered under various federal anti-poverty programs, like I think ultimately are going to do more to move the needle on access. Like I think that there's a symbolic, like just affront to the idea that you would pay a tax on tampons because they're not a necessity, but and obviously every little bit helps, but I think that some of the advocacy that's happening to try to ensure coverage under other anti-poverty programs for the actual cost of the products is maybe going to be even more important in terms of really opening up access.
Okay, that's interesting. I hadn't thought of it in that way. So specifically for the Dignity Project, how can we as a community help you and other organizations that you collaborate with? I know that you mentioned the Persisterhood, and when we were emailing about this panel back in August, I think, you also mentioned My Sister's Closet, which I did not realize was part of what your work and what you do.
So as you guys saw earlier, just using the internet and sharing everything that we put out is huge. The internet is our best friend, especially at this time during the pandemic, because we can't be out in the community as much, meeting people and interfacing with fellow citizens. So really just sharing our posts, keeping up with the information that we put out, and just keeping us on your mind and mentioning us to other people in the community would be huge.
Yes, and I'd also like to add like product donations, like besides monetary, if you're just like going through your closet and find like 4 back boxes of like unopened, like even like diapers that you can't use anymore, like we can take those and redistribute those. So really anything helps, and we appreciate it all.
Do you actually have any, is the Persisterhood workshop doing anything in the next couple of months?
Yes, they are. I think it's November. They have like a November market. I can get the date to you, but it'll be like a craft fair basically. And then whatever they make from that, they donate to us for our donations coming up in December.
Okay, I think I actually know the market you might be talking. Is it the handmade market?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, so look for information for that. I actually think Talia is really organized about putting all that together, and I believe there might even be a Facebook event already out there for that. And it's always a great, it's always a good time. You can get your gifts there for the holidays. All right, so turning the question over to Deborah, what do you see as the biggest legislative obstacles for abolishing taxes on menstrual products in the state, and how can we overcome them? I think you kind of
well, it's hard to get pretty much anything progressive through the state legislature right now. I think this might be more movable than some other things, but I think that, just getting the attention, it's a very crowded legislative calendar, and kind of building support is tough. And then I think as advocates, there's kind of, and this is a little bit what I was alluding to, strategic questions for organizations like now to think through, like, if you're going to have a limited number of bills to really get behind and to push, which, like, I think that there's a lot of different things, like we met on this Equal Pay Act, but, there's all kinds of different kinds of legislative priorities that now might want to put its muscle behind. And so I think that I think it's just kind of doing that strategizing. Like I haven't followed the state campaigns all that carefully. I'm not sure so many people want to go on record and be like, oh yes, of course we need to collect the taxes from tampons, because it just sounds ridiculous. So I think it's more like, as groups and legislators prioritize, what are they going to push for? Like, where does this fit in the bigger lineup? I also just put in the link or in the chat a link to what's, I think, probably the leading federal proposed legislation on point, which has been introduced by Grace Meng, who's a congresswoman from New York, who's been really proactive on these issues. And it gets to what I was saying about sort of making sure that Medicaid covers the cost of menstrual products, that homeless assistance providers can use federal grant funds to buy menstrual products just like they can other necessities. Like, I think it's also sort of a question of, does now and other kind of local organizations put their energy into state-based advocacy around, like, say, the tampon tax, which is a state issue, or into sort of support for federal advocacy and all kinds of not easy answers where there's so many different progressive bills you might want to push and only a limited amount of energy and sort of window to move different things. So I don't know if that was helpful, but that would be about it.
It's all helpful, all the information. And actually, to the point about the state legislature back in 2020, I think I'd read an article that the bill that Carrie Hamilton introduced was later added to a diaper tax bill, and they still couldn't make it happen, which is really sad for various reasons. But it's like, okay, a lot of work to do in Indiana. All right, so next question for both of you, and then we're actually going to open it up for audience Q&A, and we do have a few questions already in the chat. For Sydney, Mary, and Deborah, what work is ahead for you in 2022?
So in 2022, the Dignity Project is going to be focusing on working with schools within Monroe County. As some of you might know, some of the high schools here in town have recently incorporated hygiene products into their bathrooms, which is a step in the right direction, and we love to see it. But we want to be more active within the schools as far as education and outreach, and just building a strong network of young people who are aware of periods and period poverty, and just starting the education process at a young age.
Awesome, thank you. And then Deborah, are you working on anything in particular?
At this point, nothing in particular, but certainly happy, like I've been an informal consultant on other bills related to pregnancy and accommodations and leave, and, happy to kind of be involved if it can be helpful on sort of legislation that might move here or testifying or things like that. I've done that before when the Senate and the House have been considering things, so.
Yeah, actually, I think before a lot of people got on the call, I mentioned to Deborah that she and I were on an equal pay group together. So I'm sure I will be seeing you this coming year when the legislative session opens back up. So I'm going to move to the audience Q&A portion, and I do have a question from Regina Moore. Who in the US Congress is working on the issue of a tampon tax, if anybody?
So I think that because sales tax is basically a state level, sales taxes are enforced by the states, not the federal government generally. Most of the advocacy around the tampon tax specifically has been at the state level. In terms of federal legislation, so I put this link in the chat to a broader federal bill that would tackle other aspects of menstrual equity, and Grace Meng has been I think the most prominent point person on those issues in Congress. I'm sure if you click through to the bill, I'm sure she's got co-sponsors on this bill, but I think she's been the person who's been most associated with it.
Awesome. I have to take a closer look at all that. We actually do action alerts from our social media pages. And so I'll have to discuss it with Shruti since she's our legislative action expert, but might look forward to putting an action alert out about something having to do with tampon tax. So Julie, is it okay if I just go ahead and read your question? Menstrual products are now supplied and available at no cost in restrooms on IU campuses. What about in public and government buildings in Monroe County and across the state?
So just from our standpoint, we know that Monroe County schools, within MCCSC, have worked towards getting those products in bathrooms this year. So I definitely know that they're at the high schools. I'm not sure about middle schools, but I don't know about the public, government buildings or anything.
But because MCCSC is a state school corporation, I wouldn't think that it would be unlikely that we can expect period products in government buildings, maybe not in the immediate future, but definitely something within the next few years.
Yeah, and actually I do know from a few years ago, Shortridge High School, their Now chapter, they provided menstrual products at their high school. So that was, I know, really appreciated, and it was a good program. If they still have it, I don't know.
Yeah, thanks. I was trying to remember if the public library has products out. I don't know that they do.
I
But
don't think they do.
yeah, I was contemplating places like that and like rest stops and yeah, things along those lines. In
Right.
addition to, just any other public government building.
So that's all I have from the chat. If anyone has a question they'd like to ask, I just want to open up the floor. Feel free. Abby, I'm going to call on you.
So this is kind of an issue that I've sometimes run into doing advocacy. Is, for example, I used to do like a bunch of mutual aid work when I was still living in Bloomington, and we would get like a lot of pushback from people from time to time about disposable products. So for example, like if someone was someone who lived in a trailer park had really bad water and they asked for bottled water, and then they would get a lot of like pushback about like, that's really wasteful. And like I think about this sometimes in relation to tampon, like disposable like tampons and pads as well, especially people who are trying to do advocacy for people who are menstruating and experiencing homelessness. They're like, oh, you should just get like a thanks underwear or like a cup. But then it's like the practicality of that kind of runs against a little bit counter to the environmental aspect. It's what I found, because it's really hard to get like access to public restrooms and to facilities where you can wash your period underwear. So I was wondering, like, do you have thoughts on, in general, like, do you have thoughts on like how do you kind of address those issues? Like, how do you tell people like this is maybe not the most helpful suggestion? And have you kind of run into that?
Yeah, so like initially what we ran into was like, we had some of our members come to us and be like, hey, like, are you guys willing to look into anything more like environmentally friendly as opposed to like only donating tampons and pads? So that's why we have started to include like the menstrual cups, but we really only donate those to like all options who specifically request them, who like that kind of deals with like families or like middle way. That has like access to like the cleaning aspect of like what is needed for those products. But for the most part, like definitely like environmentally, it was a big thing in the beginning, but we've not had anyone ask for like reusable underwear or pads or anything like that.
And unfortunately, environmental options usually come second to what is the easiest to access and what is the most sustainable for people who, like you said, don't have access to places to clean their underwear or things like that. So unfortunately, ease has to come before environmental aspects.
And I don't know the science on this, but I know when I was looking into diaper choices, it wasn't actually clear really that reusable diapers were more environmentally friendly because of all the energy that goes into the washing process of it. So, I think people think, oh, that would be more environmentally friendly, but I'm not sure it is. And I don't know if the same might be true of period underwear, but, especially if you're running it in a separate load because that feels more comfortable to you or something, like I'm pretty sure that the environmental trade-off might not be so clear anyway. I think the bigger thing is, it feels a little bit like of course we should be environmentally conscious in all kinds of ways, but the environmental impact of this is pretty small compared to a lot of other parts of one's life. And I think maybe having a little bit of perspective on that and the benefits that come from ready access is important too.
So that's, yeah. Does anyone else have any questions they'd like to bring up? Regina, go ahead.
Thank you. This is not a question, but it's just a comment. Christina Hale, who was formerly in the state legislature, also talked about introducing a tampon tax bill. And she spoke before a group of women and said, in Indiana, you can buy your own personal plane and not pay tax on it. You can buy gold bullion, gold bars, and not pay tax on it. And yet, here's the most essential item a woman might go through in her life, and you pay tax on it. So this is it's very disturbing to me. And Deborah also disturbing on a national level with the anti-poverty programs. I hate to sound like a man-hating old woman, but honestly, these rules and laws were created by men who have no idea what it's like, what the need is, the embarrassment as a young woman, or as a perimenopausal woman, when things happen, you just need a product now in whatever restroom you go into. Which is clearly another issue, but it just, I applaud you all for your work on this. And I would be happy to poke somebody at the state legislature about this and try to elect, I know it's difficult in Indiana, but try to elect people who would be more sensitive to these issues, and also in Congress too. So I'm going to talk to the people who are running on the congressional level this year about this, just as a little test.
Yeah, that
You know
sounds
what it's
great.
like. Thanks for letting me speak.
Yeah, thanks, Regina. I totally agree. If you, or I know Natalia is on the state central committee for the Dems. If anybody hears of anything, any rumblings going on at the State House, I think that our organization would love to know about that so that we can advocate for any bills that might come up. I'm going to open up the floor to any other questions that we might have for our panelists, comments. All right. So it looks like our meeting is going to be a little bit shorter today, and that's great for everybody to enjoy this sunny afternoon. I would like to thank our panelists, Sydney, Mary, and Deborah, for joining us today, letting us know about their work and how we can help and advocate. And also just specifically for the Dignity Project, if there are any ways that we can collaborate, help you out, anything, just send it to us. We're happy to share any events or campaigns that you might have going on social media. And feel free to just keep the lines of communication open.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you. We will let you know.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for inviting me.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much. All right, that's all we have for today. I want to also thank our board members and our members who are here. It's been great, and hopefully I will see all of you at the election. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Everybody. Have a good day.
You too.